Most people know about the horrors of Nazi Germany during World War II, but there's another chapter, far more secretive and just as disturbing, that history rarely dares to mention. It was called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. But what really went on behind those walls had nothing to do with clean water. In truth, it was a place where human lives were stripped of dignity, where men, women, and even children became disposable test subjects in a government-run horror lab. This is the buried story of Japan's Unit 731, a story so dark, even the victors helped cover it up. And before we go further, make sure to subscribe to The Lost Chapter, where we bring you the hidden side of history they don't teach in classrooms, because what's forgotten still matters. In the early 1930s, Japan was no longer satisfied with its island borders. The military had invaded Manchuria, claiming it as a puppet state called Manchukuo. But along with that expansion came something far more sinister than just land grabs. General Shirō Ishii, a respected army doctor and microbiologist, had a vision. He believed the future of warfare wasn't bombs or bullets, it was bacteria. He pushed the idea that if Japan could harness biological warfare, it could control entire nations silently. To his superiors, the proposal made strategic sense. Infecting enemy populations with deadly diseases could break armies without firing a shot. So under the guise of a public health initiative, Ishii was given funding, land, and full military authority. Construction soon began on a massive facility outside the city of Harbin in northeastern China. Its official title sounded bureaucratic: the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. But from the beginning, it had nothing to do with clean water and everything to do with weaponized death. The complex that emerged wasn't just a lab, it was a fortress. Surrounded by barbed wire and guards, Unit 731 quickly became one of the most secretive installations in Japan's empire. Inside, a chilling routine was underway. The victims weren't volunteers, they were civilians rounded up from nearby towns, along with resistance fighters, political prisoners, Koreans, Mongolians, Russians, and eventually, even captured American and British soldiers. To strip away their humanity, they were given a nickname, Maruta, meaning logs. The term was used casually by the staff, as if they were talking about firewood. In fact, official records sometimes listed human test subjects as materials. Some of the atrocities committed inside included vivisections performed on living, conscious subjects to observe the effects of disease on organs, deliberate infection with plague, anthrax, syphilis, and cholera, followed by dissection, frostbite testing, where limbs were frozen and then thawed repeatedly to study tissue decay, forced exposure to lethal gases, low-pressure chambers, and dehydration to death, injecting animal blood into human veins to see how long a person could survive. Women were raped and then infected to observe sexually transmitted disease progression. Pregnant women were deliberately infected so researchers could observe fetal development under infection. None of this was rogue experimentation. It was protocol. These actions were approved and funded at the highest levels of Japan's military command. As gruesome as the lab work was, Shirō Ishii believed that true results required large-scale testing. So Unit 731 took its experiments into the field. Entire Chinese villages became test sites. Planes would drop ceramic bombs filled with plague-infected fleas, contaminating water and soil. In some cases, contaminated supplies of rice, clothing, or even cigarettes were distributed to civilians. Witnesses described seeing family members suddenly erupt in high fevers and die within days. Doctors, if they arrived, were unable to help, and entire communities disappeared as outbreaks spread. Unit 731 wasn't alone. Sister units like 100 and 516 carried out similar biological and chemical testing in other parts of China. Some of them tested mustard gas and cyanide, both banned under international law. Even as Japan's war effort began to collapse in 1944 and 1945, Ishii was allegedly preparing to launch plague attacks on the US mainland, specifically targeting California, with balloon bombs or submarine-launched devices. Though this plan was never executed, documents later revealed serious planning, confirming how committed Ishii was to turning disease into a full-scale weapon. So who was Shirō Ishii? Educated, charismatic, and obsessed with prestige, Ishii wasn't a stereotypical madman. He was a rising star in military medicine, beloved by some, feared by many. He believed Japan had a divine mission, and that science should serve that destiny. At any cost, Ishii lived in luxury, while his victims lived in cages. He attended banquets, traveled to Tokyo for meetings, and returned to Harbin to continue what he saw as progress. He even created portable incinerators to destroy bodies and evidence more efficiently. After the war, some testimonies claimed Ishii planned to go down with honor by destroying the entire Unit 731 facility and taking his own life. Instead, he chose another path, one that would ensure he kept his secrets, his freedom, and even his pension. By the time Japan surrendered in August of 1945, Unit 731 staff had already begun burning files and killing remaining test subjects. The complex was demolished, and many top scientists assumed false identities. But US intelligence quickly learned of the program's existence, and they were deeply interested in what Ishii had discovered. Rather than prosecute him for war crimes, US officials made a deal. If Ishii handed over all his research, including the results of human testing, he and his team would receive complete immunity. The Americans wanted an edge over the Soviet Union in biological warfare, and as disturbing as the data was, they saw it as too valuable to pass up. So in a twist of cruel irony, the scientists behind one of history's worst war crimes were never held accountable. They were never tried, never shamed, and never punished. Many of them went on to hold positions in Japanese medical schools, government agencies, and private companies. Some even helped build Japan's post-war pharmaceutical industry. The death toll of Unit 731 is still debated, but estimates range between 3,000 and 12,000 people, not counting those affected in field tests. Very few survivors ever spoke out. Some feared retaliation, others were threatened into silence. Even those who did speak found it hard to be believed, because the truth was almost too horrific to imagine. Japan's post-war government did little to acknowledge the victims. Textbooks omitted the program. The official narrative focused on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, while downplaying Japan's own war crimes. To this day, there has been no formal apology, no reparations, and almost no education about what happened inside Unit 731. Some of the victims' descendants have formed advocacy groups demanding recognition. Others quietly mourn, knowing their family members vanished into a forgotten nightmare. You might ask, why revisit this? Because history doesn't disappear just because it's uncomfortable. The methods developed by Unit 731 laid the foundation for modern biowarfare programs worldwide. Even today, some nations study the same pathogens used in those early experiments, allegedly using data obtained after the war, and more importantly, justice was never served. If the world can forget something this extreme, what else might it be willing to ignore? The legacy of Unit 731 lives on, not just in documents, but in the silence of the nations that buried it. It's a warning that convenience can outweigh morality, that the powerful often choose secrets over truth, and that unless we remember these chapters, we risk repeating them in new forms. Unit 731 was more than a military lab. It was a machine, designed to dehumanize, to torture, and to kill in the name of science and empire. And in the end, those responsible walked free. Their crimes were hidden, their victims forgotten. But the story still echoes today, if you're willing to listen. So if this story opened your eyes, make sure to subscribe to The Lost Chapter, where forgotten history makes unforgettable stories.